As the transition begins from the Biden administration to a second Trump administration, two of the many, many terrifying prospects are these. Number one, Donald Trump Jr. is in charge, apparently, of vetting the cabinet members of a second Trump administration. And number two, one of the names that's been floated as a potential press secretary for the Trump administration is Alex Jones of InfoWars. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I got a couple of clips for you, and this is some truly harrowing stuff. I mean, mind-boggling and darkly funny in the sense like I can't even believe we're in this timeline, but here we are. We're going to start with this one. Donald Trump Jr., one of Donald Trump's many disgraced children, is apparently in charge of staffing the most important roles in the new federal government, the cabinet of the United States, the president's cabinet. And he also reveals a bit about his methodology about who he's going to select and who he's not going to select.
I'm going to be heavily involved on the transition. I want to make sure now that we know who the real players are, the people who will actually deliver on the president's message, the people who don't think that they know better than the duly elected president of the United States. I want to make sure that those people are in his cabinet. I want to make sure that those people are in this administration.
So that's Donald Trump Jr., who has no business. My God, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, the one who is married to Ivanka Trump, he had no business being in federal government either. But I'm using this as a point of comparison. Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who was basically shadow secretary of state, along with Ivanka Trump, these two had no business being in federal government. They had no experience. They had conflicts of interest. As a matter of fact, the intelligence agencies begged Donald Trump when he was president to not put them in the White House, particularly Kushner, because they thought he was a liability given his financial ties to foreign nations, particularly hostile or dubious foreign nations. Trump overrode them and put him in that position anyway. But there is no question, as bad as that was, as nepotistic and corrupt as that was, Jared Kushner is smarter and more stable than Donald Trump Jr. And now apparently Donald Trump Jr. is going to be in charge of vetting the most important federal government positions. And his criteria, he says, is he doesn't want people in the cabinet who think they know better than Donald Trump. Well, no, actually, you do want people in the cabinet who are smarter than Donald Trump, who have more experience than Donald Trump in their particular fields. That's the whole point of having advisors. Now, no matter who is in charge, I obviously agree that if you have a chief executive, they're the ones who get the final say. They're the ones who get, to call the shots. God, as terrifying as that is for Donald Trump. So you don't want insubordinate or defiant figures. But yes, you do want people. You want your Secretary of State to know a hell of a lot more about diplomacy than Donald Trump. You want your Secretary of Defense to know a hell of a lot more about the military and military strategy than Donald Trump, obviously. But the thin-skinned narcissism in this family is such that they can't tolerate. Oh, you think you're smarter than Donald Trump? You think you know better than Donald Trump about like domestic policy and foreign policy and, stuff that matter that he has demonstrated no competence in? We don't want you. And what that suggests is that the people that they're going to try to put in cabinet positions, at least reflexively, are really unhinged, stupid people. And if you had any doubts about that, well, apparently recommendations being made by prominent MAGA influencers, including Don Jr., by the way, we don't have a clip of him saying, he's just on the record. We'll talk about that in a minute, is Alex Jones as press secretary of the new Trump administration.
I want to be very clear about Alex Jones. I will crawl over broken glass and give him everything I earn. If all he needs is someone to pay the salary, leave it to me. Leave it to me. I'll get a second job to pay whatever salary he wants to be the press secretary. If he's like, I'm gonna need $500,000 a year, leave it to me. Like I said, I will pick up a job and I will raise the money. It'll be totally fine. If we get Alex Jones, we are not worthy. We are not worthy. But Trump, please, it would be the greatest troll. And by the way, he is more than equipped for it. He has run a show for decades. All he does is talk and answer and respond to questions. He is totally equipped for it, and they hate him. The deep state hates Alex Jones with a vengeance. X-Smokes writes,
It'd be such a troll if you put the face of your administration, the person who's supposed to interface with the media, if you make Alex Jones that role. These people are stupid. and unhinged. And there's no reason to believe that Trump wouldn't do that. Why would we believe for a second that Trump wouldn't put Alex Jones as press secretary? It may be Carolyn Leavitt, who I would argue is unhinged, but at least she's less unhinged than Alex Jones. He made Kayleigh McEnany his press secretary, but now he hates her guts and she's on Fox, which no doubt pays more. But here's the thing. That was from Candace Owens, who is close to Donald Trump. She's a top MAGA influencer. Her words carry weight. But going back to Don Jr. has been on the record for nearly a year saying that he wants Alex Jones in his father's White House. And now that Trump will be having the White House, now that the White House will belong to Trump once again on January 20th at 12:01 p.m., that's entirely possible. And press secretary, I should say specifically that role, it doesn't require it doesn't require Senate confirmation like many other cabinet roles do. Although I should also say two things on that score. Two things. Number one, I have no reason to believe, none, that a Republican Senate, which we will now have, if Donald Trump said, hey, listen, screw press secretary, I want Alex Jones to be Secretary of State. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way they would ever do that. But really? Really? We played the clip, Marco Rubio saying, oh, we'd be very deferential to whoever Donald Trump wants to make, anything. He has a mandate. Can we really rule out the prospect that Trump would make that recommendation, that a Republican Senate would check him? I don't think so. And then number two, let's say that does happen. Let's say by some miracle, a Republican Senate goes, this ain't it, Chief. Donald Trump can simply appoint Alex Jones as an acting secretary of X, Y, or Z, depending on the role. And of course, again, for the specific role of press secretary, it doesn't require Senate confirmation at all. So it's very possible that Alex Jones will find a way into the White House. And why would we think otherwise? Own the libs. That's the animating principle of the MAGA movement. Now, as a reminder, Alex Jones is in dire legal jeopardy and financial distress. So this was from just a few weeks ago. Alex Jones fighting attempt to sell his social media account rights in InfoWars auction. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones is seeking to protect his personal social media accounts from being sold in the upcoming auction of his InfoWars media platform to pay more than $1 billion he owes to relatives of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Okay? Claiming that those accounts would violate his privacy and deny him a chance to make a fresh start after bankruptcy. The trustee overseeing the liquidation and sell-off of the assets, InfoWars and its parent company, Free Speech Systems, asked a federal judge on Friday to include the social media accounts as part of the auction scheduled for November and December. The judge delayed a decision on the matter for at least a week. Jones's lawyers argue the personal media accounts that use his real name are not owned by InfoWars or FSS, but are controlled by him personally and should be considered part of his persona that can't be owned by someone other than himself. They argue that trustee Christopher Murray does not have a right to the social media accounts as property that can be sold and warned that a purchaser could face lawsuits as to whether they were rightfully obtained. U.S. bankruptcy judge Christopher Lopez in Houston said a proposed order regarding the potential sale of the social media accounts that preserve Jones' rights to sue over ownership later was unclear and that tentatively scheduled it for another hearing in a week. Quote, we should have clarity and everyone agrees that something can be sold before it can be sold, Lopez said. I want a purchaser or a bidder to know exactly what they think they can buy. I don't want to create litigation risk for a potential purchaser. And it goes on like this and on like this and on like this. This is the key part as a refresher. Jones and his company both filed for bankruptcy protection in 2022. The same year, Sandy Hook families won a $1.5 billion in defamation and emotional distress lawsuits against Jones for his repeatedly calling the 2012 school shooting a hoax staged by, quote, crisis actors to get more gun control legislation passed. 20 first graders and 6 educators were killed in the Newtown, Connecticut shooting. During 2 civil trials in Texas and Connecticut, parents and children of many of the victims testified that they were traumatized by Jones's hoax conspiracies and his followers' actions. They said they were harassed and threatened by Jones's believers, some of whom confronted the grieving families in person, saying the shooting never happened and their children never existed. One parent said someone threatened to dig up his dead son's graves. That is who Don Jr. and Candace Owens and many MAGA influencers want in Donald Trump's White House, want as his press secretary, perhaps want him in a different role. And as disgusting and despicable and dishonest and conspiracist as Alex Jones is, given who Trump is, that would probably be the most plausible, like the most logical outcome of a Trump presidency. Like, it would be disgusting. It would be a violation of all the norms and expectations we have of the federal government. It would be a slap in the face of the Sandy Hook families and people who just value decency. But for Trump, having Alex Jones as your press secretary would absolutely make all the sense in the world. And that is why I believe it is very possible it will happen. Terrifying stuff. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.